Welcome everyone, it's the Crypto Lark. Very excited today to have the chance to speak with the guys from LTO Network, a very exciting project that has been getting a lot of chatter recently. I'm joined today by Sven, who is the CTO, and Ivan, who is the CMO. Guys, how is it going?
Great.
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to have you on. Now, we're going to be breaking down really getting into what you guys are doing tech-wise and some of the awesome clients that you have and how everything kind of comes together and what hybrid blockchain is and all that fun kind of stuff. But just a quick note to everyone in the audience, as always, guys, make sure to DYOR on any project. There's links down below in the description where you can go and check out the website and all these things, get a lot more info about what LTO is doing. This is kind of just a high overview today, but we'll be diving into some of those tech aspects a little bit more. Also, a big thank you to the team at LTO for supporting the channel by sponsoring today's video. So guys, the elevator pitch, high-level stuff, what are you doing?
Right, so back in 2016, we started off, we were developing software for contracts and all kinds of legal documentation and building workflows around that. And at some point, a few of our clients were asking about how well they could trust our system, since it's all trust-based. So that's when we decided to see if we can move into the blockchain space, because that addresses that issue perfectly. And that's how we came up with this decentralized workflow model. So that's when we started building our, rebuilding our workflow engine to make it decentralized. And that's how we decided to build this private blockchain. And for trusting issues, we noticed that if you build a private chain, you need some way of knowing that chain is which chain is the real chain. Mm-hmm. So that's when we added our public chain. So our public chain is purely for anchoring all the events that happen on the private chain, so that if at some point a company decides to manipulate the chain, and then you get an argument about which chain was the actual chain, then you still have the proof, because all the events are anchored on the public chain.
Yeah, so to add a bit, like compared to other projects, we didn't just start with the blockchain, we ended up with the blockchain as the solution to the problems that were there before. So it was kind of an evolution to us. And then, as Sven said, the private chain, so we needed the privacy of data on one side and the custom logic, and then they wanted to have the decentralized part for the security. So as Sven explained, the hybrid part there is where you have the custom logic on private chains, not just one big private chain, but many of them. Yes. And then you use the bottom layer, which is like the normal public permissionless blockchain, as the security settlement. So we take the best out of the two worlds, because usually projects either do either consortium or public. We combine those two in between.
Yeah. I think it's a super important step for businesses in blockchain, right? Because you have to keep them honest, right? As a customer of a company running a private blockchain, I mean, well, that's all great if I can't access it or I can't verify that the information on there is honest, right? They may as well just be using a closed database at that point. But bringing in this hybrid chain model, that shakes it up. That connects that verifies that makes them honest, right?
Yep, exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
It's very, very cool stuff. Now, you guys have got a few different things working kind of under the hood here that I want to get into. One is the proof engine. Now, you mentioned a little bit about the engines that you're going through here. So we're going to look at the proof engine and the workflow engine, but let's look at the proof engine first. So kind of break down for me what this is and how it fits into the LTO ecosystem.
Exactly. So when we build our public chain, we decided to optimize it for anchoring. And we noticed that anchoring can be used for lots of different purposes. And one of the use cases that came out of that was the proof engine. So the proof engine basically stores proof of data that exists at a certain point in time. So if you want to prove that a document is signed at a certain point in time, you can anchor that using our public chain. So the proof engine kind of wraps around that idea. And what other things that you could do is prove that you agree upon something. So this again moves a little bit closer to the legal space that we're in. where if you want to have an agreement about something very simple, so let's say me and some customer agree upon some deal in an email, then yeah, you can tamper with the email at some point. This is where we want to hook in the proof engine, where you have your private key, both have a private key, both sign the email, and you can use the proof engine, the API of the proof engine, to anchor that on our blockchain.
But just for others, I guess, what can you debunk anchoring there in a couple of sentences? What is it actually anchoring?
You're right. So anchoring basically means timestamping it on a decentralized chain. So what you do is you create a hash of a document, and you put it on a chain, and at that point, so the chain is immutable. So when the transaction is there, you know that at that point in time, that document existed in that form.
And nobody can dispute that, right? They can't go back and say, "Oh, no, you signed it. It's on the chain."
Exactly.
Yeah, if you take the same document and try to hash it again, and then check the hash whether it's there, that proves that it was there indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. And obviously for business, that's massive, right? I mean, we look at all the fraud and stuff that goes on and the disagreements, and big companies go to court over this stuff all the time. And you're kind of removing that because this is the proof there on chain. No one can, negate it or deny it or change it, which is very powerful stuff for businesses.
Exactly. So yeah, so this is our very simple way of go to market, because it's for customers, it's very easy. They already have all this kind of data, and they can use our simple API just to start anchoring on the blockchain.
Nice. Now let's jump into the workflow engine next. So how are you guys bringing this into the ecosystem, and how are you leveraging the power of blockchain to make your workflow engine work?
Right. So our workflow engine basically is a uniform way to describe a workflow, and then all the parties that are involved inside the workflow, they can participate and shoot in advance. This workflow is described as a finite state machine. This is something which is commonly used for workflows. Basically means you describe a workflow with states, and you can transition between states using certain actions. And all of these actions you can log onto a blockchain. So basically what happens is that you first describe your workflow using this finite state machine. We kind of created a language around that using JSON notation. And then that will be like your Genesis block on your blockchain. And then every participant can shoot in an action, which will trigger a step in the workflow. And this is a very generic way of building workflows. And basically, you can build anything using this workflow engine.
Nice. Now, you guys, the use cases for this kind of technology, there's a lot of interesting stuff, right? Supply chains and audit trails and a few other things as well. What I would really like to know is maybe you can give us maybe 2 or 3 examples of some of your clients and how they're actually using this stuff, how LTO is changing their day-to-day business life and making their business life better.
Yeah. I think because the hybrid solution also presents the hybrid kind of market approach, right? You have the very simple layer 1 is like anchoring the proof engine.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a more complicated toolkit for layer 2, which is the workflow engine. So those two present 2 kind of different groups of use cases. Let's start, I guess, with the simple one, which is layer 1, the public blockchain. That's, I think sign request would be a really good example there. Sign request is a competitor of DocuSign in Europe. They have over 1 million actually, and they have already a live use case with us. So what they do, let's say when you sign a document, as Sven said before, you simply hash that signature, hash the log. You know the technicalities better.
Yeah, you hash the document, and they also, basically they hash the document, and they put this hash into a receipt together with the transaction ID that is then generated using this hash.
Yep, they were using Ethereum before, but then they switched a few months ago to LTO Network because of the advantages we had, like with scalability and also the costs. Yeah. So that's a very simple one. Just timestamping, providing digital data integrity. That's basically it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, so basically you don't have to trust their system anymore, that they didn't manipulate the documents in their system, because you have to prove that the document was signed in that form at that point in time.
Yeah, like how you say sign DocuSign, right? Let's say the different one. You just sign it and then you get a log in your email proving it. So with sign request, you get a log with the link to LTO Network Explorer, where you can see if the hash is valid or not. You can just take it by itself and try to hash it through some other way, and then you will still get the same hash. Yeah, that's basically the thing.
Nice. And so those guys are using the proof engine mostly, right? In that situation. So who's using the workflow engine, and how are they kind of applying that to their business?
Yeah, so for the workflow engine, we're working together with the Dutch and Belgian government.
The Dutch and Belgian government?
Yes.
Cool.
So we're doing a project in waste transportation. And there are waste transportation companies that can transport waste from one country to the other. In this case, we're doing a pilot with the Dutch and the Belgian ministries of transportation. And these two, so this is a typical use case where blockchain is really convenient, because both countries do not necessarily trust each other. So if you were to build one system where you would
especially when it comes to taking care of each other's trash, I'm sure. Your trash, no, it's your trash, man. It's totally yours.
Exactly, that's true. So if one of the if there would be an integrator building one centralized system, then how would you know that this system wouldn't be manipulated by other countries or the transportation company, for that matter? So this is where a decentralized workflow system is a perfect use case. So we've built a simple workflow where once a license is given out for a waste transportation company, it registers how many transportations it could do and how many kilograms they can transport between the two countries. And then every time a transport is initiated, it will be logged onto the chain as an event. Also, the chain will check if you're actually allowed to transport, if you didn't run out of kilograms or transport quantities. And then everybody can who has access to the chain, so also the people who check the transports, they would have access to this system as well, and they can use their mobile application to check if the transport was actually allowed to cross the border. This is one of typical use cases of our workflow.
And we are doing the captions, our partner in workflows and mobile applications. So I guess like another cool thing there is that LTO Network doesn't have to directly work with clients. We changed that approach to being, let's say, the backend for every system. So like, imagine like we are not the only ones doing the timestamping of digital signatures, right? I think there is BlockSign and many other parties doing it. But when you build your own custom UI, you have to get users for it. So that's really complicated. That's a separate company on its own. We just integrate in the back of every software application or integrator, and then our solution gets pushed to already existing user base. So if we were to start that ourselves, we would reach in 1 million users when you already have sign request, DocuSign, and other ones would be close to impossible. But we just plug in, so that's why we have the solution. And another thing, I guess, for the normies like me, because Sven is a technical guy. So let's say workflows can actually relate to. A workflow is any process. Let's say when you take a trash out, speaking of trash, you have to open the door, take the trash back, walk outside, open the bin, throw it in. That can be described as a workflow as well. So every different process you do creates its own custom logic. So the architecture is not like a one consortium chain. It's hundreds horizontally scalable, or thousands, doesn't really matter, horizontally scalable miniature chains with all the custom logic in it. So then you maintain privacy, but of course the settlement layer is the public blockchain.
Very, very cool stuff. Now, guys, I want to move on in the conversation to talking about the token, because this is something super interesting. So basically, right now we've got LTO as a BEP token, so that is a Binance token. It's also rocking as an Ethereum-based token currently. And then you have your mainnet token. So there's 3 places where the token exists essentially at the moment. So can you kind of break down why this is the case and what's kind of the logic behind having a mainnet token. Maybe you can bring in the bridge troll here as well, because I think this is a really interesting part of the mechanism and why we have sort of open market tokens.
Yeah, I'll take that into mind. Yeah. So when we started, let's say when we got to the place where our solution was ready, other projects, they do it like this. They just have ERC20 and then they say, oh, we'll do mainnet at some point. Why? Because it doesn't really matter for them, because they have zero live use cases, to be honest. In our case, we already had to have something to present to clients. We had to have our own mainnet. But a mainnet token as a new, let's say, fundraising project is hard to list on exchanges. Exchanges don't want to deal with new change, like, nah. So that's why initially we set up a mainnet token and then just a bridge swap one-to-one, as like how POA Network did it before. They were the first one. And then you have the ERC20 token. So you can travel back to whichever side. If you want to stake, which is a consensus level kind of thing, you have to have mainnet. If you just want to trade or hold them, you can choose whatever you want. But trade only on ERC20. The bridge troll is a bit later. And then we will, at some point, the Binance chain came along. They asked us, hey, you're a good project, want to migrate, not migrate, integrate. We were like, okay. So for now, ERC20 and BEP2 token are both like liquidity tokens. Yeah. And they're pretty much the same thing. You can travel to either side wherever you prefer to trade or wherever you like the UI more to swap them to whatever. But of course, mainnet is the real functionality there. So it was a bit complicated, but actually it's really not, because as we see Cosmos moving more forward, it can become quite typical for projects to have tokens exist on many different chains. But it's the same one-to-one thing. So now to the bridge troll.
Yeah, so we wanted to really incentivize the usage of mainnet, obviously. This is where we needed our staking power for generating nodes. So that's why we introduced the bridge troll, to not let everyone dump all the LTOs on the market. So we came up with a way to burn tokens if you move over to the ERC20 or BEP2 token. And this started out when we first launched our mainnet and did our ICO in the beginning. And it will slowly go down in coming 6 months. I think it will end somewhere next month, slowly to 0%. And started out where you had to burn 55% of your tokens. So this would have a double incentive, where you would like not only burn tokens, but also receive less tokens in ERC20.
Yeah, it's a new way of locking up. Let's say how private sales are even still being done. Yeah. It's monthly distribution, meaning every time you get your bag, right, you just dump it in one candle. And that's also restricts you from freedom, because if I want to dump it, I just want to dump it. And we decided, okay, have that freedom. You decide whatever you want. If you want to hold, just hold it till the bridge troll is 0. If you want to sell it, you'll get the punishment. So it's a way of negative incentives, let's say.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see how it's worked out, too, because it was 55 when you started, and what's it at now? Around 10 or 15 or something like that?
3.5%.
3.5, there you go. So it's coming near the end. So people who saw that came in early, and they said, I've got to get out of this, or whatever it might have been, whatever the reasoning was, they were willing to take that 55% hit and go over to the ERC20 tokens and sell it on the open market. Very interesting how that kind of worked out and the reasoning behind that. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's like a way of like bootstrapping the network when you are not really ready to have the entire supply liquid. And then as you move forward, because we had more adoption coming up, more staking, the token actually has utility now. Like we entered the top 20 most used blockchain, a little bit chill here. So then people are like, okay, I can actually stake that stuff, right? Yeah. And the staking is not inflationary. I'm actually really surprised. Like now people are kind of crazy about staking, but what I think they don't realize is that staking rewards, they have to be bought by someone. Otherwise it's constant inflation and value, right? In our case, it's non-inflationary staking. So the more transaction, so rewards are transactions, and transactions are being paid for by clients and integrators. So you don't have that just like creating tokens out of nowhere.
So it's only transaction fees that are going to the stakers.
Yeah, but other networks cannot really make this staking possible because, again, there is not much usage in other chains. So if you don't have usage, your only way of incentivizing running nodes and supporting the network is actually creating extra. And we really didn't have to have that.
I think it's impressive, too, that you guys have kind of already made it into the top 20 most used blockchains, because You know, there's projects that have been around a lot longer than you guys and aren't there. So I think that's really cool indeed.
Yeah, thank you. We're kind of proud of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So I want to talk a bit about what we can expect kind of moving forward for the rest of the year. I know the LTO Marketplace, that's one thing that's kind of in production right now. So you guys kind of break down what the LTO Marketplace is and then kind of tell us what we can expect kind of in the coming year.
You can do the marketplace, but I'll start with one thing. So basically we started, first we were a software provider, right? It had its limits. We moved on to the blockchain. It had a much more open source effect, which we really didn't expect. A bunch of people helping us, and we want to utilize that stuff more, those distributed incentives. So the integrations, the software side, the usage are going well. We're going to capitalize on that more. But now there is more potential to, let's say we have a bunch of partners in the reg tech and the legal tech. We have universities as partners and other companies. Mm-hmm. So we need to ensure that this entire ecosystem now has incentives to work together. And I don't want to say benefit from each other, but that's kind of how it works. Mm-hmm. So we're expanding the narrative. So if we did well with one narrative, let's make new and get successful in those as well. So if the research area, we might even end up fundraising in LTO, depends on the legal circumstances, because that's kind of the question now. But if that happens, all right, we have a few projects already applying to do that as like a LTO labs. So the research that, then the, the STO market as well, because we have legal and reg tech that really fits well together, the VC funding and stuff like that. But what we're good at is adoption and building stuff and getting it used. So marketplace is going to be the first step to getting there. And
yeah, exactly. So in the marketplace, we want to bring all the kind of integrators together, where we provide different type of integrators, companies that are more specialized in UX or companies that are more specialized in hardcore programming, to create a sort of ecosystem where if a client comes in and he wants to do decentralized workflows, we can already help him with the right integrating partners and get them running quickly.
Very cool. So it's really just about getting the services that the companies need to really get going with all this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be somewhere, I guess, in between of Amazon and Zapier and Apple kind of thing. Some between specifications are still being done, but we already have a few partners like Captions, Sign Request, and others who we're already building solutions with together, VID and ScanTrust now as well. So just need to expand it and connect it better.
Yeah, and all of these companies are building specific solutions for their clients, but they're also building like generic tools that can be reused, and this will also be a part of the marketplace, obviously, to put these tools, these generic tools, into the marketplace for other integrators again to use.
Yeah, we are the support platform for them all. We don't need to directly connect with the end users, and that's why it's better, because then you can scale your business much more rapidly instead of just like, because we did all of this stuff before, and this approach is already paying off really well, and we want to make it sure that it's utilized even more.
Yeah, well, it makes total sense. I mean, you could go out there and try and, knock on all the doors and get all the new customers, or you can just work with people who already have those customers and help them serve their customers even better. So that's a pretty powerful thing. Guys, very, very cool stuff. So I love LTO. You guys are doing really great work. I just want to say that, it's awesome to see, blockchain companies out there nailing it down and getting with businesses and having a real impact, saving businesses money and giving businesses tools that are useful for them that they can use. And I think the fact that you have moved already into, a top 20 used blockchain, you do have a lot of good clients. I think that's really representative of that. So for anyone out there in the audience, if you guys want more information, links down below. You can go and check out the website. There'll also be links for the social media stuff. So if you guys want to go and join the Telegram community or get more information, ask questions, make sure you go and check those links out. Guys, thank you so much for coming on today and kind of giving us, the short version, but the very interesting version of what you guys are doing over at LTO.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure.